Well, hello and welcome to the Imperfect Parenting course. I'm so excited that you're here with me. We're going to have a lot of fun on this course, and we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. And if you haven't read my book, Imperfect Parenting, Connection Over Perfection, I would strongly encourage you to do that. It's got all sorts of good things. We're going to talk about some of that, but of course I couldn't possibly shove everything that's in this book into this course as well. But I picked out some of my favorite elements. I picked out some places that I feel are so important for us to talk about, and I want to help be your guide on how to do this well. I did a Parenting 101 course a few years ago, and I've got some of that in my book too, but this is a little bit different. This is a little bit more around the topic of leadership, the topic of a responsibility, our parenting styles. I'm going to be talking about all different things, and I'm going to introduce you to one of my most favorite people on this planet, my husband, Ben Serpell. So hopefully you're ready to go. I hope that you have something to write with. You've got as much of your undivided attention as I can possibly have. Most likely you have children, so I understand that. But I would encourage you to lean into this course in a space where you can actually give it the attention that's needed. Because I'm going to hit you with some challenges. I'm going to hit you with some real truths, and I'm going to hit you with some things to go and think about. This isn't a feel-good course. It's really an invitation for you to go and grow and become the best parent that you could possibly be. So if you're ready, let's jump into it right now. So the first thing that I want to really just discuss with you is this idea that there's a war on connection. There really is. It's pretty evident. It's pretty much in front of our face, pretty much anywhere that you turn around. I mean, TV is trying to get our kids' attention, social media is trying to get our kids' attention, and even ours. And so this idea that having a war on connection, that it might be happening in your home, is a pretty big reality. And I don't know that I have enough parents aware that there's something fighting for their attention that's moving them away from this idea of connection. Really, if we were to boil it down to some simple 1 and 2 problems that we're facing is in this war of connection, is that the idea of fear is running really loudly in a lot of parents' homes. Which means when fear is loud, what's quiet? If you follow my dad at all, you would know this because he says it all the time. Love gets quiet when fear is loud. That's probably the biggest issue that I see in parents' homes today. When they come to me, they're asking for help, they're struggling. It's because fear has become so loud. Fear of failure, fear of not measuring up, fear of repeating what they had when they grew up as kids. It's something that robs us of connection. Now, I want you to be so aware of this thing because it is really going after holding the attention of your focus, your engagement, what you're bringing to your parenting. And if you're not paying attention to this, you're probably just letting things happen, which we'll get into that later. I did want to identify a few areas that I feel like get the most attention in this place of disconnect. And that is, one, you have some missed opportunities of communicating the message, I love and value you. People often overlook these simple tools that are life-changing for our family, and that's the love languages. So I've got that in my book. I would encourage you to go and get it. I'm not going to go over it here. I think I did it in Parenting 101. But this is a place that causes disconnect often, is that we're not paying attention to how our kids hear and experience that message of I love you. And so we get disconnected and we don't do anything to prepare that. Often we make a lot of withdrawals and not a lot of deposits. So that's a place of disconnect. Another place is that we have a bunch of communication breakdowns. I don't know about you, but I have a house full of teenagers. And communication is next level. I mean, I know toddlers like to think they're great communicators, but teenagers are the next level of thinking that they're good communicators. So the idea that there's a breakdown there, the idea that maybe you as a parent need to go and level up in your skill of communication might be something to be paying attention to for this place of disconnection. The other thing is, I think sometimes our insecurities as parents play up. We get offended at our teenagers' disrespect or our middle schooler's attitude, or even our adolescent child's just disregard and are so selfish. And sometimes our insecurity and our offense takes over our ability to actually focus and pay attention and lead. These are just some of them. I've got some other ones on there, but the idea of disconnect, wanting to come into your home, is so incredibly loud. And it sneaks its way in if you're not paying attention. And then fear drives it home even louder. So it's really important that we realize that there really is a big war on connection. And it's our job as parents to make sure we're paying attention and doing a good job being prepared for this. Now, one of my favorite things to remind parents is that the biggest problem in your home is a disconnect. Now, I know most parents right here are looking at me like, Brittney, you haven't been into my home. It is disrespect is the first problem and the biggest problem. You haven't been in my home. There is no peace. I get it. I've heard all these things, but let me tell you, disconnect in your home will and is the biggest problem you could ever have. I recently had a coaching session with a woman, and she's doing a great job, working really hard. But she's got this mindset that is hijacking her connection. And often she's leading with correction before she's leading with connection. And let me tell you, you will never win when correction is what's leading you, when fear is driving you. You have to increase the level of connection in your home if you really want to see a shift in your culture. I was thinking about how this is modeled. And Jesus did just a beautiful job. In John 8, we read about the woman caught in the act of adultery. Now, in law time, in Moses' law, this woman should be stoned, right? There's your correction. That's how this is supposed to go. But she's thrown at the feet of Jesus. And he pretty much, I don't know what he's writing in the sand, but he's writing something, he's doodling something, and he's just simply giving out wisdom, which is pretty much, you who's without sin, go ahead and cast the first stone. Now this woman, I'm sure she's just laying on the ground. I can't imagine she's got much on. But she's overwhelmed, waiting for punishment and correction to come because that's what she's used to. One by one, these accusers begin to leave, and Jesus looks down at her and says, "Where are your accusers?" And she's like, "I don't know." And he goes, "Well, it's not me." Simple instruction that he has with her is go and sin no more. Live a life without sin. Jesus' ability to put connection before correction is what made him so attractive to people. His ability to say, I want to love you well. It doesn't mean that he didn't have correction in there. We see that happen. But the reality that Jesus led first with connection is how he battled this war. And so I want you to be paying attention to some key areas that I see are cycles that show up in homes time and time again that rob us of this. Now, again, I'm setting the tone for you as you got to be paying attention to things that you're responsible for. So some places of maybe cycles, let's call it cycles that you need to break as a parent. The first one is self-preservation. Now, that fight, flight, or freeze that happens because we are scared. There's a moment of fear. We don't know what to do. Now, if we operate in our parenting in that place, now this might sound harsh, and if you've known me at all, you've known that I am pretty much a straight shooter. So hang with me here for a moment. When I think about self-preservation in parenting, it feels like an act of rebellion. Because when I go into a place where I'm thinking about myself, I'm acting out selfishness, I am rebelling against the very thing that God has asked me and called me to do when it comes to parenting these children. I'm called to train up them in the way they should go. I'm called to lead them. I'm called to be the example of love. I'm called to a new standard and to live my life like Jesus did, because I am the example for my kids of who the Father is. Now, if I live out of a place of self-preservation and self-protection and I let that fight, flight, or freeze in all the time, I'm going to be moving more into this place of rebellion. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want rebellion anywhere near my parenting. I want to chase that thing as far away from my home as possible. So I definitely don't want to be operating in it. I think about in Numbers 13 and 14, when they find the promised land, it's this beautiful, rich country, and it's got some giants in it. And Joshua and Caleb are trying to tell the people about the goodness that God has promised them. And yet here they are acting out that fight, flight, or freeze. Now, I just want to put before you, these are those moments, these cycles we've got to be aware of and that we have to be willing to break. Otherwise, we bring them in for the next generation to pick up. The other thing is that fear can't win anymore. It shouldn't be what wins. It really should be this thing that we're driving away, because fear's main goal is survival, where love's main goal is connection. I want to win this war that's battling in my home over connection by quieting the voice of fear and turning to the voice of the Father, saying, okay, Lord, what are we doing? Because I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, I'm lost. But knowing that God is in this with us, I want to make sure that I'm moving away from fear and away from this place of self-preservation. The other thing I think about is we often can have low vision. And when we have low vision, we usually don't know what we're doing or where we're going. So I think this ability to cast vision for our home, for our family, to look at where we're going and to be confident that God's called us into something, that breaks the cycle of fear. That chases away this place of me partnering with this thing I don't even want in my home. There's a great story I tell in my book that I'll tell you quickly here. It's the story of the 3 bricklayers. So a man walks up to 3 men laying bricks, and he asks the first one, what are you doing? He says, I'm laying bricks. He goes, oh. He asks the next man, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm building a wall. He asks the 3rd bricklayer, what are you doing? He says, I'm building a great cathedral. That's what happens when you have vision, is you can see that the mundane, day-to-day, the ins and outs, the graham crackers and goldfish, the teeth brushing in pajamas, the driving to and from friend's house, there's purpose. That the late night conversations that my kids run into my room after youth group at 10 p.m. when I'm already asleep, and yes, the light is out, it is clear. I wasn't looking for a small group in my bed at 10 p.m. But this moment when my kids come in and they want to tell us about this, you bet the light's going back on. Or you bet I'm making room in my bed for them to tell me, because I've got vision. I want to ask you the question is, what is your goal? What is your goal in parenting? What is your goal when it comes to battling this war of connection? We're called to do more than just sacrifice as parents. We're called to be obedient. Recently, I was reading in 1 Samuel, and he's having this discussion with Saul. And it's this moment where Saul lets into basically pleasing man and moves away from what it is that God has asked him to do. And he makes space for entitlement to come in because he's justifying, well, I've sacrificed all this stuff. And Samuel simply reminds him, God is more about your obedience than your sacrifice. I don't know what your goal is, but sometimes we look at parenting and go, I have sacrificed so much. I've given so many sleepless nights. And we think that we have some room for entitlement of why we can take a back seat and stop engaging. But the reality is that God is asking us to be obedient in our parenting and steward what it is that he's given us. I'm going to invite Ben up to talk a little bit more about vision, and I love how he puts and frames things, and I want to introduce him to you. So hang tight for just a moment, and he'll be on, and we'll be able to talk some more about how to have a different posture when it comes to vision and really battling this war on connection.
Well, hello. I love what this woman's talking about. Clearly, I married her many years ago, and we are building this family together. The things we're talking about, the things you heard her describe, this is what we are building, always trying to figure out. Maybe couldn't figure it out yet. We are also imperfect parents, so we're trying to learn as we go. But I want to reiterate a couple of things that Brittney talked about here, and just drive the point home. Really, she said most of what's in my heart, most of what I want to say in this session here. But the first one is, you are the leader. She said that 9 different ways, but I want to remind you today that you are the leader. 1 Corinthians 11, Paul's writing to the Corinthians, and in the Passion Translation, he says it like this: I want you to pattern your life after me the way I pattern my life after Christ. Follow me the way I follow Christ. Now that's a pretty big statement. Like that's some either puffed up pride or you're pretty confident in who you are and the way you're going to be leading. I think that's our call as parents, is that you're willing to look at your children and say, follow me the way I'm following Christ. I have a leader. I have someone I'm submitted to that I'm following. Do that with me as well. This is our first call, is to lead our family the way that he leads us. And Brittney said that again, many different ways, said it beautifully today. I think this is the first thing we have to pay attention to, because the other thing that happens is something else is leading our home. It could be the most upset child in the house. It could be my shame I haven't dealt with. It could be the pain that is unresolved and leading me around. That's where I'm showing up in my home, is through the pain or the shame or the hurt or the loud child or the child who just won't connect. And I'm scared, and I'm afraid, and fear's broken in. You are the leader of your home. That's one of the first points I want to drive home. The second one is this. Brittney asked the question, what's your goal? What's the goal in your family? What's the goal in your home? This is probably the most asked question we have. There's 2 questions we ask in our coaching sessions. The 2 main questions we ask is, what's your goal? What do you need? These questions come up in our home all the time, in our coaching sessions with families and parents, constantly. But this question, I think, I want to dig a little bit deeper into it and have you consider, what really is your goal? Do you know? Have you written it down? Have you thought through, what is the goal and where are we going? Because if that's just this aloof idea that, yeah, we have a goal, but we couldn't really describe it, we're not really sure what it is, then that's what's going to happen, is we will just be riding the train of something else or someone else or the most important thing today. So this is what we did. And we actually have a course called the Family Culture Creed if you want to dive deeper into this thing I'm about to describe to you. But I just want to give this key to you, something you can walk away with today and practice right away. And it's this. There's 3 questions we ask families to consider that puts in front of them, what is the goal, where are we going, and what's the mission that we are leading our family in. Here's the questions. What is the strength of our family? I paused for a minute on purpose. What are you great at? What's the thing that people look at your family and go, they are really good at that thing right there? What's the strength of your family? The second question, what's the passion of your family? When you guys sit around without some really important thing to do or some sports game or some dinner to make or some event to plan, what's the thing that bubbles to the surface? What's the passion of your family? And the last one is this. What's the legacy of your family? We like to say this a little bit different. We like to say, what's the thing your family will be famous for? When people write books about your family, about your children, about your culture, what will they be talking about? What's the legacy that you want your family to leave? And these 3 questions right here just bring into focus, this is who we are, this is what we carry, and this is where we're going. This is the strength we're leaving behind. And I also believe that there's something from my parents, from Brittney's parents, that they've poured into us, that we want to take the best of that, bring the best of us, and pour that into our children, so it just keeps gaining momentum. This is what we're doing right here. Because we are the leader. We'll keep saying that over and over again throughout this course, that you are the leader. So I would really encourage you to take a moment and write the question down, what's the goal? And then probably a way to find that answer today is what's the strength, what's the passion, and what's the legacy of our family. And then for us, it's the Serpell family. We did this many years ago when our kids were little, and it still hangs on our wall today. And it's so fun to look at those statements and remind ourselves, this is who we are, still today. And it's a changing document. We adjusted some things as it moved forward, but most of it has stayed the same. This is still who we are today. This is still who we're living from. This is still what we're living for. So I'd really encourage you to take a moment, answer those questions, and I promise you that if you begin to take ownership for being the leader, something will begin to shift in your home.